We can thereby make our contribution, and perhaps the most that can reasonably be expected of us in 1963, to the preservation of peace. It is here that the United Nations has served us, not perfectly, but well, and in enhancing the possibilities that the organization may serve us better, we serve and bring closer our most cherished goals. These are the words of Haile Selassie.
News Talk for the Virgin Islands, AM 970 WSTX.
Good morning. All right. Love it. Hey, you know that music starts playing, I just want to dance in my seat and everything else, but, you know, first is the Marshall, next thing is Bronco de Collins, so let me just chill out here. Okay? Well, we're going to get going really quick here, because I got a guest in the house. Hey, I told you from before, mark your calendar, mark it up if you had marked it already, you know what I'm saying? After a while, it's just a black dot and you can't miss it, right? Okay, we've got Richard Dorsey in the house. You know, he was here about 2 weeks ago talking about the work that he's doing through his organization there. And yes, Island Analytics and Marketing, and taking surveys to the next level. You know what I'm saying? Not just numbers. Interpretations and ways you can look at it and make sense out of it in a way that you can apply it to your life and your future here in the Virgin Islands. So we had to have him come back because that survey he was working on, information is coming out, was looking really deep there. I had to get my scuba tank and everything else to really go down deep with that one. Okay. So anyhow, so as you see, he's there all relaxed and calm and just ready to go and share the numbers with you. All right, and good morning, Richard.
Morning, Doug. Listening and viewing audience, Richard Dorsey once again for I Am LLC. We keep it short. I Am LLC.
Okay, good thing. All right. Well, you were doing a survey, and the survey has been released, and I'm so happy to have you here to talk about it and give us your very special insight as to what the survey revealed could possibly mean, could give guidance on, or whatever the case may be. So I'm going to turn the floor over to you. Folks, we're going to have a very special presentation here, because for those of you who are following us on Facebook, you know, you can find this show on WSTX on Facebook. It's on YouTube, and I've also got my Douglas Canton channel there on YouTube. So plenty of ways that you can get it be a part of the club or just out there in the crowd on YouTube and just look at it. But if you look right now, you're going to see that we're going to be having some things you can look at. So when this gentleman is talking about the numbers, he'll be able to show you directly some of the stuff that we're talking about, and that you could better understand. All right, so Richard, with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks. Morning once again. So before we start, I wanted to kind of give everybody a different way of looking at the VI. So what we're going to really talk about today is not just the territorial results or the island by island. We're going to get down into the sub-districts. And you talked about this a little bit last time. So the sub-districts, we use the U.S. Census sub-districting map that they have for the territory. So for those that are following, you'll see on the screen right now, this is St. Croix's sub-district map. And what that looks like is that there are actually 9 separate sub-districts in St. Croix. And we had to become familiar with this. When you look at St. Thomas, there are 7 sub-districts. When you look at St. John, there are 4 sub-districts. So I'm a Virgin Islander first. I'm a Crucian right now, so we're going to stick on St. Croix just to make it a little easier. So when you're looking at St. Croix, this might seem a little bit familiar in terms of, you have east, west, north, and south. But the difference is you have East End, which is sub-district 3, 2, which is Christiansted and some of Richmond and Watergut and places like that. You have 7, which is the Cyan Farm sub-district, and it reaches all the way over to Salt River as well as Judas Fancy. Even parts of Orange Grove and Golden Rock. You have sub-district number 1. You have sub-district number 8, which you have the Lime Tree Refinery. You have the airport, but you also have like Paradise and parts of Barron Spot and Humbug and things like that. Then you have sub-district 5, which is most of North Shore, but you also have like Grove, Glen, Mumby Jew. Then you have sub-district number 9, where you have Estate Wim, Carlton, White Lady. You have sub-district number 6, which is heading into Spratt Hall, but also covers other parts like across from a little north of Williams the Light. And then you have downtown Frederickstead. So the reason why I want to sit down and let people kind of soak in this is because when we actually start to get into the numbers, we're going to look at what it feels like to be in each of these sub-districts. And this is something that we want to do for the territory. So excuse my junk on my screen. We're going to go over the broad strokes first. For those who didn't get to see some of the results either in the newspapers or on our website or on our Facebook page. So when we're looking at the demographics, the majority of respondents for us were females first, 71%, and age 45 to 65. Which is in line with what you would see when you look at the U.S. Virgin Islands elections statistics. So we know females between the ages of 45 to about 70, they're the real voting bloc in the territory. And our survey looked at that as well, and we got with similar results. So we all know Democrats, the king of the hill. About 68% on our survey were Democrats, 20% were no party. St. Croix participated a little bit more than St. Thomas, which, Doug, actually we're seeing in this election. St. Croix is really coming out, so we feel that this is similar to the trend that we're seeing in the actual election process. But let's dive straight into the issues. We asked Virgin Islanders, tell us your sentiment. We want to know what your pain points are. Before we ask you who you're going to vote for, we want to get into a better understanding of what you're going through and your struggles. Now, when we looked at education, territory-wide, about 80% in terms of strength thought that substandard building maintenance was the number one issue when it came to education. Then it was inadequate teacher compensation. And third was inconsistency with curriculum and instruction. So these are the top 3 issues that we see territory-wide affecting education. In healthcare, it was the inadequate number of public health providers. So members of the territory said, hey, we want access to more, public doctors, public nurses. It was a very close tie for 2 and 3 in terms of access to various medical specialists. We all know Cleveland Clinic, and people always traveling to go to these specialized doctors. That's a big issue here in the territory. The third issue is management of the healthcare facilities. You know, we don't need to talk about JFL struggles and, you know, North JFL. We know that's a part of the conversation right now. And the high cost of healthcare. Now, while these things might seem normal, you know, we're not talking about anything new. The difference is we get to see what everybody sees. We're not just talking word of mouth and he said and she said. These are actually, you know, measurable versions of what Virgin Islanders are going through. So for the economy, high cost of living, high cost of doing business, the economic effects of corruption, energy and infrastructure, WAPA's facilities, poor road conditions, poor planning and implementation of projects, law enforcement and public safety. Number one, lack of confidence and trust, not enough officers, nepotism and cronyism. So then we asked two curveball questions. Do you think the Virgin Islands will get better in the future? And overwhelmingly, about 46% said yes, they believe that the Virgin Islands will get better in the future. However, you still have a large portion that are on the fence about it or have negative feelings. Lastly, before we ask you who you're going to vote for, we wanted to know your confidence in candidates. And we wanted to know how confident were you in your decision that these individuals will actually address your issues. And you had strong confidence, very strong confidence. You had up to 59% were saying, yeah, we're confident that these individuals that we're going to elect, they're going to do the job and they're going to make my life better. That's really strong. So let's get into the race. Right now, territory-wide, Senator VLA and Senator Sarro have a very small, within the margins of error, a very small lead on the current administration. The other two candidates, Stephen Smokey Fret and Ronald Pickard, they're in the rear. But for us, we asked the question, none of the above. And none of the above is 10% of that response, which tells me there's still a lot of holdouts, even individuals that when they get to that booth, Doug, they're going to have to make some hard decisions. Senator at large race. Current sitting Senator at large Bolkis, he's at 47%, with Miss Francis at 32%. But look at the none of the above. 20% are still holding out. They're not ready to make that decision. When we get to the St. Croix District Senators, we see Senator Gittins comes in first, Senator Johnson, then Miss Maurice James, Senator Francis, Senator Carrion, newcomer Miss Williams Jackson, and Senator Whitaker make up the top 7. St. Thomas, St. John District, number 1, Senator Potter, Senator Blyden, then Senator Fred Gregory, then Senator DeGraff, then Senator Heiliger, none above. Once again, 25%. But then we have new Ms. Henry coming in, as well as Senator Joseph. So those are broad strokes. Nothing new, nothing earth-shattering. But when we go and we start looking at it by island, right? We see that on St. Croix, the 45 to 65-year-old population, they were very strong in responding. So we're looking to see if that will also translate into the actual elections coming on November 8th. You see St. John is pretty split between the two bulks, 25 to 44 and 45 to 65. Females, I couldn't stress this enough. If you wanted to win an election in the Virgin Islands, if the ladies do not feel that you're representing them, it's going to be a really tough road. On St. Croix, we had 71% female. On St. Thomas, 69% female. On St. John, 77% female. I'm not saying the guys don't matter, but the females are very vocal in our election process. Looking at political party affiliation, Democrats, King of the Hill, but on St. Croix, 73%. On St. Thomas, 62%. On St. John, 77%. These are the numbers as we see them from individuals participating. Like I said before, St. Croix is a little bit more than St. Thomas and St. John combined. And we see that right now in the election results. I think the last one, it was like 445 in early voting. You had more than in St. Croix than St. Thomas and St. John District. All right. So here's where we start to see some differences. St. Croix, when it comes to education, substandard building maintenance is number 1. St. Thomas, number 1. St. John, number 1. But when we get into our number 2 and number 3 choices, we start to see nuances. So on St. Croix, The second biggest issue is inadequate teacher compensation. On St. Thomas is inconsistency with curriculum and instruction. Likewise, on St. John, it's inconsistency with curriculum and instruction. So once we address the big elephant in the room, which is the buildings need to be repaired, after that, you have a difference between the islands in terms of what their second issue is. For Crucians, they want their teachers to get paid. For Tomians and St. Jonians, they want to know that their curriculum for their students will be throughout, this administration and next administration. I've heard from teachers sometimes, every time there's a new administration, there might be a new curriculum. So then teachers have to go through a whole new set of training, students need to learn a whole new paradigm, and everybody kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes. When we look at healthcare, big issues, right? St. Croix, number one, inadequate number of public healthcare providers. Crucians want more public healthcare providers. On St. Thomas, it's the high cost of healthcare. On St. John, they're split between access to various medical specialists as well as inadequate number of public healthcare providers. Now, this is interesting that St. John and St. Croix would share this problem. They want more public healthcare providers. Now, you could understand on St. John, they're kind of, far apart. They don't have the big resources of a major hospital like St. Thomas. But St. Croix, we have a major hospital. We have clinics. We have FHCs, the FQHCs through Frederickstead Health Center. But we still want more. We still need more. When you look at St. Thomas now, they want the cost of healthcare to go down. So sometimes, you might have to go over to St. Thomas because they have a specialist, or there's a specialist that's based in St. Thomas and they might come over to St. Croix. But it's the high cost of healthcare that's killing them over there. What's interesting is number 3, their third choice for St. Thomas was funding for the hospitals. Now, for St. Croix, that's almost one of the last options. For St. Croix, the third issue is access to various medical specialists. On St. John, their third issue is high cost of healthcare. So we start to see, and excuse me if I'm going fast because Doug only gave me an hour, and we haven't gotten to the fun stuff yet. It's that there are nuances to the community that you're feeling as a Virgin Islander, and we're hoping that the politicians, the policymakers, those in charge will see those nuances and address thusly. Not saying that they're not, but we can share some information that allows them to see it on a more specific level. We look at the economy. Hands down, high cost of living. Hands down. High cost of doing business. Hands down. However, St. Croix and St. Thomas are different. St. Croix rates corruption, third most important, 52%. St. Thomas is 63%. So that's telling us that the effects of corruption, they feel it more in St. Thomas. It's more of an issue. So as we know in the territory, they talk about, my mom would say, all the money in the Virgin Islands is 5 cents. The government take 2 cents and give you 3 cents, nobody's upset. When the government take 3 cents and take 2 cents, that's when you get upset. They're upset on St. Thomas. It's an issue for them. St. John, high cost of living, but their high cost of doing business is not as prevalent as St. Croix and St. Thomas. When we look at energy, WAPA is once again a big elephant in the room. However, when we look at second and third choices, for St. Croix, it's poor road conditions. Then after that, it's poor planning and implementation of projects. On St. Thomas, it's poor road conditions, but then it's lack of alternative renewable energy sources. And we can understand that because you've been getting bombarded by callers. WAPA has just been in a really tough spot in St. Thomas this year, blackouts after blackouts. So they want some reassurances that something else is going to keep the lights on. And on St. John, it's actually a split between poor road conditions and poor planning and implementation of projects. So when we go into law enforcement, number 1 on St. Croix, lack of confidence and trust. St. Thomas, higher than any other island, lack of confidence and trust. St. John, lack of confidence and trust. But then we get into our second and third issues. St. Croix is saying we don't have enough officers. St. Thomas is saying too much nepotism and cronyism. And then St. John is tied between the nepotism and not enough officers. And if we could start to bridge issues, So for economics, for the economy rather, it was corruption was a big issue. Now for law enforcement, it's nepotism and cronyism. So there's a cultural issue of how we engage each other on St. Thomas that's not necessarily as prevalent. Not saying that doesn't exist, but it's not a pain point for St. Croix. Will it get better or will it get worse? All right. St. Croix says 40% is going to get somewhat better. 11% says it's going to get much better. St. Thomas, they say 32%, it'll get better. 9% will say it'll get much better. So you can see the negative trend grows the further you get away from St. Croix. So on St. Thomas, you have around 44% they feel it's going to get bad. On St. John, it's already almost 50% on St. John is going to say it will get bad. St. John, 38.9%, much worse, the highest ranking. So Crucians feel like, okay, we're optimistic. St. Thomians are like, okay, a little bit here. St. Junian's like, yo, I'm waiting for the storm. It's coming to hit me. Confidence still high across all three islands. But the interesting part is Thomians are the most confident. So nepotism is a big issue. WAPA is a big issue. Cronyism is a big issue. But yet they're the most confident in their elected officials, which is awesome, you know. Candidates by island, going back to the races. So on St. Croix, we see that Senator VLA and his lieutenant governor candidate, they're 46%. Albert Bryan and Governor Bryan and Lieutenant Governor Roach, they're at 42%. Now, if we're not talking a lot about the other candidates, I'm not trying to be dismissive of anybody. However, in majority of the polls, they are low. So we are talking about those who, you know, have high poll numbers. But they're there as well. Smokey Fret, he's at 6% with Mr. Pickard. They're at 1% on St. Croix. What we see on St. Thomas, the two front runners, they're neck and neck. And on St. John, we see that Senator VLA is polling better. The senator at large race, Senator Bolcase, is doing really well on St. Croix. He's doing okay on St. Thomas. Miss Francis, you know, she's gaining on him. But in St. John, they're in a dead heat. All right. Doug, let's get to some. Any questions before I jump into the different stuff?
Before we move forward, I had somebody on the phone lines, but hold on a second. Let me see. Okay, but they're gone. Anyhow, folks, I just want you to know that I'm really trying to dig deep into what we're doing here. And if you have a question or comment that relates specifically to what we're presenting here, you know, we're going to try and get a little bit of that in. And for all of you out there, just remember that you can tell your friends to go and check out WSTX after the show even, if they want to see what was presented here, because it's important to you. And by the way, you know, I only gave him an hour.
And we got a lot to dig through.
Yes, and we got a lot to dig through. 9 o'clock, we have the governor and lieutenant governor coming in to the show. So in that sense, we got to make the best of this time, because this is really your information. And again, I can't stress enough how happy I am to have someone like Richard in here breaking this stuff down. Now, he's not saying that he is God and he have the exact correct interpretation of everything. That's not what I'm hearing at all. As much so as look at the numbers, think about it, how you feel about it. And most important, when you hear that Island Analytics got a survey out there, get your phone out
and take it.
and take it. Make your voice heard. Okay? Because as far as we know, this is representative. If it's not representative, then it means that people who should have been speaking up weren't speaking up. Make your voice heard. If 10 people in a room and 4 of them say I ain't participate, and 5 of them saying I gonna do what I want, and 1 say, well, you know, I gonna just look at the 2 sides, you know, well, who gonna run things, right? People who get involved and run things. Okay. With that, I just want to say, folks, it's really all about you. You the magic ingredient. So we're gonna go back to Richard.
Okay. I think you had somebody on too.
Oh yeah, let's see how much I'm into this thing. WSTX
Pleasant good morning to you, Brother Canton.
Yes, sir.
This is the kind voice of reasoning, Dr. Yates. Let me join you in your happiness.
Well, but first of all, have you been listening to what we doing now?
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Okay.
First of all, I listened to you wanting to dance based on the music you were playing when you came on the air.
Right, but it got even better with the numbers here that we're hearing.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
This is the reason that let me join you with your happiness of having Richard on this morning. I feel so full of courage hearing this young man giving us information that is sensible, practical, and is so necessary. Especially when he talked about identifying the districts based on numbers, so we can have pictorial for those of us who are just listening on the radio and not watching it on Facebook. Visually, we have a pictorial in our mind idea of what demographics he's speaking of and about. And I'm thankful for him for what he's doing. What I'd like to do is to link with him and learn more of how he goes about it. Because as you can now, I don't know, Richard, have you ever heard of Dr. Yates before?
Dr. Yates. Sounds familiar.
Okay, all right. The gentleman to be on television teaching mathematics.
Yes, I remember Dr. Yates. Yes.
Well, that's why you impressed me, you know, when the way you presented yourself on the numbers, because that's my expertise, and I like to make things simple in mathematics. So keep on doing what you're doing. And Canton, again, I'm so thankful for you for bringing him on to your broadcast at first and having us, for those who are listening. A question I have for you, Canton, is this. What is the possibility of what he's putting out today can be heard again on your broadcast for people who may not have heard? You know what I did? I got on the phone, I called a whole bunch of folks. I said, you got to listen to this. You got to listen to Richard. He's on Canton's show. My question is, when can you have him again on your broadcast? So we need this kind of information more here in the Virgin Islands.
Well, the great thing is that it's being streamed to the internet and recorded to the internet, so folks will be able to go back to WSTX's Facebook or YouTube channel and be able to see it again. It's also on my channel, Douglas Canton, on YouTube.
Great.
Right? So,
yes.
And this is the important thing, that people, if they miss the introductory, they can go back and see it and understand and have questions and be ready for the next time. As for Richard, you know, sometimes I guess maybe he don't feel like I got a little thing on the ankle there that's saying, hey, I'm tracking you, you know, because I'm going to haul him in here as often as I can whenever there is a poll, so that people could get the information in this way that could get them more involved in thinking about their community and seeing how much their particular opinion can make a difference, you know, in that sense. Because one of the challenges we have in our community is we have this quote-unquote Jesus complex, where we put somebody in office and we wait till it's the time to you know, when things get rough and, you know, people by your bedside, and then that's when you can grab them and say, well, okay, well, what did you do for me? No, it's supposed to be something progressive all along. And this type of information helps to keep the finger on the pulse on the people, and keep the people who are responsible for policy and these decisions more aware of, hey, you're doing what we want, or you're taking us off. You know what I'm saying? And right now, I take no pleasure out of this throw them all out type of thing that we end up in too often. All right? It's too late then. When I say too late, you wasted 2 years.
Too much damage has been done.
Right.
Too much damage has been done for you to try to say you're going to fix that broken stuff and you don't even have the parts to replace it.
Right. So let's get more into a thing where we can monitor and give input by way of these type of surveys, for instance.
My love, Brother Canton, my learning question for Richard in this day is this. Richard, here's my question to you. Have you thought about, because what I'm doing right now is a search for information in the interest of why from Governor Evans to now, and from all the local senators we've elected to now, not one of them is a minister of a church. And perhaps if you, like you're doing your survey, etc., ask people that question about why ministers are not running for the Senate or gubernatorial. Something is not correct about that picture. And here's the reason I'm saying this. Because I grew up in a culture and a time, which is the 1950s and 60s, where ministers were leaders and they have congregation and they know about governance and leadership in society. We have so many churches here and so many religious leaders here. But the fact is that not one of them was a senator or governor. Why not?
Well, that's interesting. I think maybe we'll include that in the poll. Not so much ministers,
yes,
but
yes, please do. Yes, Mr. Canton, great idea.
But who the people feel would be most qualified in terms of wisdom, ethics, whatever.
Moral code, yeah.
Right. Because we can do a cursory look at who our leaders have been over the past since Evans to now, let's say, and what the strengths and weaknesses are of the particular people in the legislature as perceived by us, whoever us is, or whatever the case may be, and throw it out to the people and say, well, what do you think? So anyhow, let's get back to the data, man. Let's get back to the data, okay?
Thank you so much, Richard.
All right, thanks again.
Attention.
Okay,
thank you very much. I'm listening.
All right, take care.
All right. So now I want to slow down. What you're seeing on the screen is you're looking at how the U.S. Census subdivides St. Croix. So we talked about this before, and now is where it's going to start to make sense. So as I start to scroll in on this spreadsheet, you'll see that each of the sub-districts, you have their population size, and I took the time and I organized all the estates in those sub-districts and gave you the populations based on the 2020 census, right? So when we're looking at Anna's Hope Village sub-district, Work and Rest, 918, Peters Rest, 676, Herman Hill, 659, total population over 3,000. Christiansted sub-district 2, population 1,800. Biggest areas, downtown Christiansted, of course, 922. Richmond, 686. Orange Grove East, 346. We're looking at East End, 2,300 citizens. You're looking at Christiansted, mainly in the Gallows Bay area once again, 922. So what happens is they cut the lines right through people's yards sometimes. So the population number on top is what the U.S. Census says is the official population for this sub-district. But what we've done is we've just included all of the estates, even if they overlap in other sub-districts, so that you can get a better understanding of, who's where. The two that I want to look at and we start to break down, we're going to look at the highest populations. Sion Farm Sub-District 7, 10,332 Virgin Islanders on St. Croix. Biggest estates, you're looking at Barron Spot, 1,400. La Grande Princess, 1,400 again. Strawberry Hill, 1,200. I'm sorry for those who are looking for Ginger Thomas. There's no Ginger Thomas. There's actually just Strawberry Hill. There's no Strawberry. There's just Strawberry Hill. Even if you live in Sunny Acres, technically you're just in Strawberry Hill. And then we're going to look at South Central Subdistrict number 8, population 7,400 Virgin Islanders. Overlaps a little bit once again with Barron Spot, 1,445. Strawberry Hill, 1,200. Castle Coakley, 1,200 again. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to look at this area here versus this area here. So Sion Farm to La Grande Princess, and basically Sunny Isles all the way into Paradise. Now, when we start to look at these, we're going to start to see some fun stuff. Okay, here we go. So on my left, you have sub-district number 7. On my right, you have sub-district number 8. When we look at average age, they're basically on par, 51 years. When we look at male-female breakdown, we see that 82% from sub-district number 7 were female. Sub-district number 8 was 65%, right? Definitely more Democrats than anything else. Now we start to look at what the issues are. So, Cyan Farm Subdistrict versus South Central. So, once again, it's a little bit of a nuance to get it in your mind. So I'm just gonna say Cyan Farm region versus what's the biggest state in this one, so I can make sure I kind of put you in the right mind space. So we're gonna do Cyan Farm to Princess, and then we're doing Barren Spot to Paradise. Okay, good. All right. So the Cyan Farm to Princess area, of course, for them, it's inconsistency with curriculum and instruction. Now, here's where we start to dive down deeper, Doug. Territory-wide, it was the buildings for education. St. Croix-wide, it was the buildings, right, for education. Now we're in Cyan Farm area. Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess. It's not the buildings. It's inconsistency with curriculum and instruction. And then tied for 2 and 3, substandard building maintenance and inadequate teacher compensation. So we see, if you keep drilling down, you get a different response. Now when we're looking at Barren Spot all the way to Paradise, right? All of that southern area, inadequate teacher compensation is number 1 for them. Number 2 is substandard building maintenance. Number 3 is the Board of Education. So at no point in the territorial overview was the Board of the Education on the radar. Not even at the island-wide was Board of Education on the radar. But now when we're looking at Barren Spot, all of the southwest region going to now Estate Paradise, their number 3 issue is Board of Education. Number 2, substandard building maintenance. Number 1, inadequate teacher compensation. I don't know if all the teachers live in that area, however, but these are the differences that we start to see. All right, let's go deeper. Let's go again. We're looking at healthcare now, big issue. For the Cyan Farm to Princess area, we're looking at number of public health providers. We're looking at the management of health facilities. Then we're looking at access to various medical specialists. Okay, now we're looking Barren Spot all the way to Paradise. It's access to various medical specialists. Then it's the inadequate number of public health care providers. And then it's the management of healthcare facilities. So their number 1 choices are completely different. Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess, they want more of that medical public workforce. Barren Spot to Paradise is now telling you we want access to more medical specialists. Now when you look at it, right, all the medical doctors' offices, they're sprinkled out throughout the territory, but there are certain little hubs. So if you're in Cyan Farm, as soon as you hit the intersection, what's right there for you? FHC, right? If you go into Princess, Prasad's office, another FHC clinic, right? You're in downtown Christiansted. All the way into Christiansted, you have different medical practitioners. So, for Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess, I need more. I don't need access because they're there. I need more of them. Now, when you look at Barren Spot heading into Paradise on that southwest swing, I have to drive to Cyan Farm, or I have to drive to Frederickstead. You see what I'm saying? So now it's saying I need access, but not just access. I want variety in my medical specialists. So what this does, it gives policymakers an ability to be proactive than reactive. You don't have to wait until the wheel fall off to fix it. You can look at your wheel and say it will fall off soon. It's time to change the tires. Let's go into another one. Economy. High cost of living across the board. High cost of doing business. However, the percentages are different. High cost of living and high cost of doing business are the same for the Cyan Farm to Princess area. However, high cost of living outpaces high cost of doing business for Barren Spot to Paradise. Economic effects of corruption is not going away. All right, let's find some differences again. Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess. You're saying they want WAPA fix. WAPA facilities and support is number 1 for them. Barren Spot to Paradise is saying it's lack of alternative renewable energies. Both agree poor road conditions is number 2, and both agree poor planning and implementation of projects are number 3. But their number 1 issues are different. We're going to look at public safety. Lack of confidence and trust, number 1 for both areas. Getting into number 2, Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess is saying, hey, we need more officers. Barren spot to Paradise, it's saying nepotism and cronyism. Cyan Farm, once again, to La Grande Princess, it's the judicial system. At no point territory-wide was the judicial system on the radar. At no point island-wide was the judicial system, Sandy South Seychelles, was the judicial system a number 3 issue. But for Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess, that's a number 3 issue for them. Now, when you look at Barren Spot heading over to Paradise, it's overworked personnel. So the picture is changing. So for Barren Spot to Paradise, they want trust. They want more community engagement. They really want to build that relationship. And right behind that is they want to know that there will be no weird stuff in the background. It won't be nepotistic. It won't be cronyism. So they really want trust, right? So the first two really tie into the relationship. And then the third one is overworked personnel. They see that the limited amount of officers that we do have at times, they're working hard. They're feeling it. Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess is saying, we want to build trust too, but we want to see more of you. Physically, we want to see you. And we want you to address the judicial system. Will it get worse or get better? So they're both optimistic. However, Barren Spot to Paradise, they're not so optimistic. When you look at confidence level, they're both pretty confident. However, Barren Spot to Paradise, they're not that confident all the time. Into the race, we see that Senator VLA is 48% in the Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess region. However, he is 57 to the Barren Spot to the Paradise area. So what this is saying too is not just in the issues, but how people are voting. Now, sometimes we only focus on how people vote, but it's the why they're voting is what's important as well. All right. So, Doug, you seen the differences? You've seen some of the nuances?
Yeah, lots of food for thought.
Yeah. So, what we can do now, I only have about 13 minutes, and I want to be just a crucial, and I want to be a virgin islander. Any questions you have before we jump to St. Thomas?
No, in fact, I'm holding off on questions simply because we're going to meet again and we're going to talk some more.
Yeah.
I'd rather that you get more out to give food for thought for people out there.
Okay, good. So now we're looking at St. Thomas. We're looking at the Shalatamali sub-district. 14,000 Virgin Islanders. You're looking at Estate Thomas. You're looking at, help me, Crown Prince's Quarter. You know, they have the gods over there. Lindbergh Bay. So that's one sub-district we're going to look at. I think I queued up two for comparison. Okay, so we're going to look at Shalatamali versus East End sub-district. Okay, so once again, Shalatamali, you're looking at 14,000 Virgin Islanders. East End, you're looking at about 7,000 Virgin Islanders, right? Let's look at their differences and see what they might be. Okay, in average age, 51 versus 58. Demographics are similar, but let's get into the issues. Okay, so on my left, you have Shalatamali, 14,000 residents. On my right, you have East End, about 7,000. Okay. Substandard building maintenance for education, number 1 for them. Inconsistency with curriculum and instruction, number 2 for them. Inadequate teacher compensation, number 3. Boom. So they're in line, right? So you're looking at Shalatamali, you're looking at East End. They're in line with education. We get to healthcare. Shalatamali is saying high cost of healthcare, inadequate number of public health workers, and access to various specialists. East End is saying it's funding for the hospitals. It's the high cost of healthcare, and it's the management of the health facilities. Once again, this gives you the ability to be very clear in how you place not just your monies, but your policy as well as your personnel power. All right. We're going to look at the economy right now. High cost of living for Shalatamali, number 1. High cost of doing business, number 2. However, unlike the economic effects of corruption, it's a lack of high-paying job opportunities. In Shalatamali, 14,000 residents are saying they want access, or rather, they would like higher-paying job opportunities. We look at East End now, still high cost of doing business, still a high cost of living, right? But it's the economic effects of corruption. So we see a switch. First, Charlotte Amalie says it's the high cost of living. East End says it's the high cost of doing business. Charlotte Amalie is saying, hey, we want more high-paying jobs. East End is saying, it's okay in jobs. We need to fix corruption. Completely different sentiments depending on which island, which part of the island you're on. Okay. We're going to look at energy and infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so sorry if we don't have enough time to deep dive. Doug is just processing. Okay, we're going to come again. We're looking at energy and infrastructure. Charlotte Amalie is saying WAPA. WAPA, above and beyond everything else, is WAPA. But right after WAPA is lack of alternative renewable energies. That's because they want their power fixed. East End is saying, yes, WAPA too, but it's poor road conditions. Then it's poor planning and implementation of projects. The need for alternative energies is their fourth. And it's just amazing to see where Charlotte Amalie says renewable energies is their second biggest issue. And then you see East End is saying, it ain't top three. It's important, but it's not mission critical. So we're going to look at law enforcement. And I'm not really diving into who's leading in which sub-district, because what's really important to me is that the people get to see, people being you, me, Virgin Islanders, policymakers, we all get to see where it's hurting. We need to be our own doctor. You know, when you go to the doctor, they ask you where it hurts, and then they ask you how much it hurts. This is our way of saying, okay, it hurting in science farm, but it hurting in education, it hurting in the buildings. Okay, it hurting in Charlotte Amalie, but it hurting in my pocket, but it hurting really because I don't have a high-paying job. Different patients. Okay, we're going to do law enforcement and public safety. Charlotte Amalie says lack of confidence and trust, nepotism and cronyism, not enough officers. East End is like, sure, I agree with you. Lack of confidence and trust, nepotism and cronyism, not enough police officers. Will it get better or will it get worse? Charlotte Amalie, 46% is going to get somewhat better. Over 50% are saying it will get better. East End, 50% are saying it's not going to get better, with about 12% in the middle. So it's leaning and saying, hey, we're not that confident that it's going to get better. However, in terms of confidence, Charlotte Amalie is over 60% says we're completely confident that these guys and ladies that we're going to put in office, they're going to do the job. East End don't think like that. East End is saying up to 46% they're not that confident. Only around 46% are confident. So it's various degrees in confidence. It's various degrees in outlook. It's different pain points. I got 7 minutes left, Doug. We could chat because I'm going to try and push any more information.
Okay. Company?
What's up, man?
I was just talking about you.
Oh, yeah? Good morning.
Good morning. So this nice gentleman to my left, he's tied in Charlotte Amalie with Senator VLA. However, East End, you're doing good. East Enders in St. Thomas, they like you.
There's no way that poll is accurate. I come in here and tell you, like, in St. Thomas, they don't even know you got another person running, you know. But anyway, I mean, everybody's entitled to their own scientific opinion.
Remember, these are a poll, not the results. We'll get the results on November 8th. So, Doug, like I was saying, this allows individuals such as yourselves to find the pain points specific to not just the territory, not just the island, but as well as specific districts. And as we've seen, Cyan Farm to Princess is different from Barren Spot to Paradise. And when we look at this, we could look at downtown Christiansted versus downtown Frederickstead. We could look at the west end of St. Thomas versus the east end of St. Thomas. And then when you start to look at just the sheer number of individuals who live in some of these districts, I think WIM is one of the biggest estates in the territory right now. If I look at sub-district number 9, WIM East is almost 2,500. I remember back in the days, I thought it was always Cyan Farm had like the biggest population. right now, even in Cyan Farm is only 1,000. So what we remember as, okay, yes, Cyan Farm is a big, that's the number one spot. Not really. It's shifted. So then when we start to look at this, we can also look at the population. We start to track census and say, okay, if the population is shifting, voter sentiment is shifting, then we need to follow that. We need to follow that current, because now Cyan Farm roads look really nice right now. Thank you to you and the one before you. My mom lives up in that area, so nice roads, good. But I live in Wim. Wim has, how much again? 2,500 people. And I had to route up my suspension every day. So now, where Cyan Farm used to be the big center, and that has been fixed. Wim is now the big center, and that needs to be fixed.
But so the big center, I don't want to contest you, right? But I mean, I'm one person.
I ain't running on the H. So me and you ain't gonna fight today.
No, we don't have to fight. But I mean, like, I love it. One thing I am is a census junkie, and the largest group of people has always been concentrated in Princess, and from in the Wim Williams Delight Campo Rico area. Historically, it's always been the biggest. We haven't had any major population shifts, and it still remains that. I mean, just in public housing alone, you got 300 units in Williams Delight, plus you got a private sector, and then you go into Wim Campo Rico. It always been, and then Princess is the other large concentration of people, and that has been thinned out a lot because now you don't have Chabot anymore. You don't have Kennedy is like being depopulated. What's the other one down there by Wapa? Gone to
Kennedy.
LBJ. So I mean, I looked at the poll. We do our own polling, and I don't think we ran a poll in right before the primary, and the university's poll was run maybe like a month ago. Same exact results. Two completely different people polling, same exact results. So, I mean, the one thing that made me question is, like, in St. Thomas, last time we get 85% of the vote. It's the highest anybody has ever gotten historically, ever, any governor running ever. So, for me to believe that Cordially neck and neck with St. Thomas with us, maybe.
Sentiments change.
Every single poll we run is like, we get there's 20% of St. Thomas that will never vote for us. We know that. It's hard baked in. It came back consistent in 2 polls that we have run. And, the way our people like study this election 1,800 ways. There's no path for victory for Cordially.
Well, before we get to victory and paths, the reason why I have him in, this is the second time I had him in here, is that, you have polls during election, and it done, and the way he broke it down in terms of looking at different things that kind of took it out of the scope of, well, is an election going on? Mm-hmm. We pass an election and we have 2 years or 4 years on who's keeping track on the pulse. I see what he's doing as an opportunity for us as the people to kind of scratch our head and think about it. Because whether it's 100% correct or 80% correct or 70%, it's something to know to think about and scratch your head. Because some of the comparisons from estate to estate or district to district, it's just interesting to think about. Now, you have a different perspective.
Yeah,
you're in the middle of an election. I understand.
No. I mean, you know what I like about your poll? Like, our greatest concern is that people, especially in St. Thomas, like, everybody feel like we have it in the bag. And that's not good for us, because we need people to come out and vote. When people think you win already, they don't come out. So your poll actually works in our favor to get people out, because we wouldn't want to have the disaster of having those 2 elected as governor and lieutenant governor of the Virgin Islands. So, I mean, I mean, nothing personal. I just think it's totally
data
accurate.
Is agnostic, so ain't my feelings. Once again, remember, ain't my name next to yours.
So I know too, like, anyway, let me leave that.
But what Doug is saying is that what I've noticed is, growing up in politics, we've gone from the fish fry to Facebook, which is a good thing. However, we're still looking at the territory in a very broad stroke. When you look at legislation, it's still a very broad stroke. You don't really get down into like the finer specificities of like this area versus that. So,
Like, make an example of what you're saying there.
you were listening?
No, when you say broad stroke, when you look at a broad stroke,
Okay.
what are you doing?
So healthcare, right? Right now, Cyan Farm is saying they want access to. Actually, let me not say it off the top of my head. Let's say what they said. This is why I like data. It don't have to be me. It's them. We're looking at Cyan Farm, and we're looking at sub-district number 8. So that's Byron Spot to Paradise. Let's go healthcare. All right. Number 1 for Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess is inadequate number of public health care workers, right? But from Byron Spot to Paradise, it's access to various medical specialists. So then how then either the executive branch or the legislative branch, how do you fix that issue? How do you provide more for one side?
You leaving out somebody, the private sector.
The private sector
Right,
too.
because-
But I don't have the
yeah,
private sector
right.
next to me.
Right, no.
So,
I'm just saying.
But then you look at their number 2 choices. Cyan Farm is saying they want better management of their healthcare facilities. Byron Spot to Paradise is saying we have inadequate number of healthcare workers. So when you look at their number 1 and number 2 issues on top, what Cyan Farm to La Grande Princess is saying, we want more of public healthcare workers and we want better facilities. Byron Spot to Paradise is saying we want more variety and we want more in terms of the labor force. So how can then either the executive branch or the legislative branch use this information to fix that nuance between the two?
I don't even think that, I really don't think it's relevant. I mean, when you look at, it's such a small amount of people. I mean, in the whole of St. Croix, according to the census, we have like 42,000 people.
Yeah, but
so
it's
I
still
mean, like when
different.
there's only one hospital, and I mean we're less than we're less than anybody on this island is less than maybe 15 miles from any health facility.
Well,
I mean, in the Byron Spot Cyan Farm area, you got what? You got two public, what do you call them? Urgent care centers. You got then you got a heart center right in the Cyan Farm shopping center. It's a center of medical care. You got a whole medical complex in Sonia. So is that perception, or is that
The thing that jumped out at me was that, yeah, in those areas you have that, but when you start looking at some of the other areas and what their concern is that they're the ones who got to jump in the car and drive down the road to get the ones
So
that-
if you look at, and then
Yeah.
if you look at Paradise, like Frederickstead Healthcare now has offices in Princess, in
Kmart West.
Kmart West, in Frederickstead. So when you say, well, access, and then the other thing that I always, we don't compare ourselves to any equals. So when we compare our healthcare access and our healthcare product, we're comparing it to Emory and to Cleveland Clinic, when in reality we have a rural healthcare. We're a rural place, period. So if you look at like a comparable would probably be someplace like Xenia, Ohio. And when you look at those places they don't have these specialists that we have. When I went to school, I was amazed, and that's 30 years ago. Most small towns that would be considered rural that have like 40,000 people, they don't even have a hospital. I mean, it's like, so when you compare the St. Croix to any place else, I mean, we are per capita, we have way more federal funds than most of these small town places, more health care, more access to emergency services. So when we run these comparisons, who are we comparing them to? Even in San Juan, where you get 72 districts.
I think if we continue to use the national against the local, we're going to keep having the same problem, because how it works or how it should be is not how it is.
Right.
And then,
but you see, I see something, it really applies to both of your approaches in the sense that the education process, the comparative process, the understanding of demographics, distances, all these different things is something we do have to bring to bear locally, because I I
You know what's a fun thing,
You know?
Doug? I got one for you.
uh-huh.
What amazes me about the Virgin Islands is that our perspective is so locked into this territory. It's almost weird when you see people break it. I have known Tomians that said they don't like to go to St. Croix because the road's too long, I'd get car sick, right? I have run into people who say, how's your mother doing? Oh, that's my classmate. I'm like, yeah, but she lives here. But they have not seen each other in 10 to 15 years. And I'm living now because I'm 37. I have high school classmates that I've never see years in and years in. But then you look at how we like spread ourselves throughout the territory. There's a reason we went from mom and pop shops to convenience stores. People, if you live in Glen, you're going WIM. You ain't gonna drive to go Baron Spot. You're not gonna drive to someplace else. That's you going WIM. So every corner shop is their own little hub. And what I see in the territory is that we have now created that model in our minds where if you tell me I need to go pick you up in West and I live East, big man, that's like me going from Orlando to Miami. That's a long drive. So perspective is the problem.
Exactly.
But it's also the solution because now we have the ability to do things on a micro scale where you could fine tune things. Because when you start to really get into quality of life, I don't want to know what's happening anyplace else. It's what I feel.
Yeah.
So I'm just showing you what they feel.
Well, let me tell you about that day few.
But I mean, I think it's perpetuated by misinformation that people tell people too. Because I mean, I just look at St. Thomas District, right? You talking about people who are saying 5 miles is too much for me to drive to drop my child to school. I mean, and those perceptions are costing us so much money because when we look at, everybody wants better quality of life, right? But then you have to balance that with what makes sense. And if all 100,000 people that we have on the Virgin Islands, everybody could fit on St. Croix, and we would be able to provide better roads, better schools, better hospital, more reliable power easily. But when you look at this problem, I think perception, once again, people only think about the island that they're on. They don't realize that every service that we have to provide in the state of New York has to be provided in St. Thomas, and then on St. Croix, and then on St. John. And the affordability of that is crushing us. So when you talk about paved roads, there's 720 miles of road in the Virgin Islands that's split 3 ways. We have no economies of scale in anything we do. One hospital in St. Croix could serve 100,000 people.
Well, let me put a little practical, maybe even humorous spin on it. Because I going down the road, and we come in on a blind corner, and this person getting out on the side. I just pull over, slow down, let them go by, right? Zip by. It got 2 cars up front, and so they have to slow right down again.
Right.
And then what they do? They turn off on the next road to go into a store or something like that. And I'm saying, for that, and that perception that I got to speed to get where I got to go. I don't have to speed. This place is not like
Right.
this. It's not really that big.
Ain't no big.
And so that's why I was saying we have to have more discussion about these things because a lot of the people who form their opinions ask them when last they travel and where they travel to and how long they stay there to say that they really can say what.
So this is something I noticed, right? We had this conversation before. I did a project with Department of Health, Project Launch. We did their needs assessment. So we interviewed everybody, FQHCs, private practices, nonprofit support groups, Department of Health. And what was interesting is that even though we were dealing with individuals who were directors of programs, professionals in the industry for 10 plus years, licensed, credentialed, they sat on boards with each other for certain initiatives. They would always say at the end of the interview, can I get a copy of that report? Because I don't know what's happening across the pond, or I don't know what's happening outside of my committee. And it was wild to see that, one, there's actually a lot of resources in the territory. I will agree with you. There's a lot. However, that interlink, that communication between that general understanding, that perception is a big issue because I was talking to individuals who are running programs that had no idea that their sister or brother in the field was available to like resource share with them. So I think what this information does it helps bridge the gap in understanding. One of the things I would like people to see is we don't look at ourselves just as Virgin Islanders, but we start to build that like small community mindset again.
No. You go smaller than that. You look at yourself as Crucian, people from Christian, people from Zion Farm.
But
that's how we think.
But it can be used for good. If you start building up your town, your community, you know, my island, my mess. If you want Zion Farm to be beautified, and you hold one head as Zion Farm, if you hold one head as sub-district number 7, which you never knew you were, then you start to realize, okay, from Zion Farm to La Grande Princess, we all have the same problems. We can all chip in, you know, and stop saying, well, is their problem, they could fix it.
And you mentioned something very important, because Governor, when we did this the first time, and he started talking about how the census looks at us and how we think of us, and we're being grouped and divided up in ways that we don't even understand, which we need to, because we need to understand not only the importance of participating in the census,
but do you really believe that? I mean, like, what? You know, when we used to run elections before, right? We used to run it on demographics. The Puerto Ricans, the Eastern Caribbean, the Christian set people, Frederick set people, Banyas. Like, those things are becoming more and more irrelevant. Like, the issues and the top issues in the Virgin Islands right now, according to your report, and which I believe because most of the others have been solved, is healthcare, education, and inflation, right?
Yeah. High cost of living, high cost of doing business.
Yeah. How is that any different by demographic?
No. Demographics is important from a different perspective, not in that context.
When you look at how the way this community is split is definitely by economics, and the middle doesn't understand how much wealthier they are than the poor. So when you look at the tax demographic for the Virgin Islands, 89 people pay 66% of the income tax out of 33,000 tax filers. If you add another 3,000 people, that's about 80% of the tax filers. The other 30,000 tax filers essentially pay only 20% of the taxes, and a lot of that is earned income tax credit, where we actually give it back to people.
And Governor, this type of information is important, because sometimes the community gets these very, very lopsided views of things, and it impacts how they think and how they act and make decisions. So that is all important. But I want to take a little quick break here in between, because I had you here for your hour.
Yeah, I done his time now.
No, it's good, it's good.
No. But I have this here for you.
Oh,
okay?
thank you.
And Governor, I ain't leave you out. I brought something for you. This is stew plum.
Wow.
Okay? So I know...
This season's stew plum? But it's been in the back of the cabinet soaking, getting real good. Okay. You could give me the vintage stuff.
Wow.
Okay? You can find gooseberry and all of them things, but stew plum, when last you had a good stew plum? Okay?
I never had stew plum.
You
so
never had? Okay, well, Armstrong, every once in a blue moon, they have ice cream with stew plum. They ain't had it in ages as far as I know. But that's also a delicacy. So in that context, Lieutenant Governor, you could share with him if you want to have more son.
He got big jar. He could share.
One, you understand. In that sense. But I just wanted to do that, because sometimes I have people in here, and in the process, they leave and they say, "Oh, I forget to give it," so I give it to you. In that flowers, it's to plum up front, okay? In that regards. All right, and I like the conversation and everything else, but I have a couple of things I want to get in that are going to change the conversation in that sense, right? The other day, you guys announced this home ownership program,
right?
Okay. And when I listened to you and Wayne Biggs, who live right next door to me, talk about it, you know, I think of all of these parents, grandparents, family who just wish their child could come home, get a job, get a home of their own and everything else. And as a veteran who says that, from my perspective, the banking system here is hostile to the VA. And I listened to what you guys were doing through this package.
Right.
And I said, wow, this is like so timely, except timely for a lot of people. Say, I needed that 10 years ago, 10 years ago, but we got it now. Okay, and I just wanted to just give you an opportunity to talk about that in terms of the thinking I went into it that made that light bulb go off and say, not only we need to do this, but we're gonna make it happen.
Well, I build my own house. Me and a group of my friends, tie the steel, mix the concrete, put in roughing all of the electrical and the plumbing. I mean, I know where every pipe in my house lay. I pour the bomb beam by hand, come across the front. So a couple of my friends, we did it, and every one of us really was like, it shouldn't be this hard. So we've been trying to figure out home ownership. The one thing that, we have a self-hate among us, and it's a big, the week, couple days before election, we get into a deep conversation. We have this self-hate among us that we don't want to face up to, that, we don't like to see one another doing well. And I don't know why. I mean, I could tell you, I have people I know that are very wealthy, and they live a very normal life. When they're here, when they go away, they live well. And I asked them why, and they said, because once people know you're making money, they just stop supporting your business. This recovery that we're doing is an opportunity to create real wealth in the Virgin Islands. And wealth, mega wealth, is not what I'm talking about, but just to get people to another level. My father told me, I dreamt about him last night, and he told me, you never standing still. And I think this is one thing that we need to understand as a community. You either moving ahead or you falling behind, because the world is always moving. And what we're dealing with now in inflation in the US, globally, and all these things that are happening, this is pushing families further behind, because you got to catch up. So the messaging, and I wanted to talk to Mr. Dorsey about that too, in our community, is not a message of an abundance. It's a message of scarcity. And because we're so small, you get a scarcity mentality. Me too, everybody. You start to say, I know when you become a Virgin Islander, when you say, you in Tonga and you say, I gotta go all the way Red Hook, it's like 5 miles away. Or you gotta go all the way Frederickstead, which is about 12 miles away. I ride my bike from Christiansted to Frederickstead in an hour, okay? It's not that far, and I ain't pedaling that fast. So when you start to look at everything as scarce, resources scarce, like if this person gets more, I'm gonna get less. We have to stop thinking like that and think about the abundance of the economy globally and how do we participate in that. This $11 billion in repairs and recovery stuff that we're doing, that's only public work, public money. There's going to be a lot of private money that's going to surround that too, at least half, if not double. Conservatively, if we do $11 billion worth of government work, $5 billion at least in private is going to be doing. I'm being conservative. We have to start to project and think about, okay, how can we make the Virgin Islands better? The most important thing to me is establishing yourself in a homestead that's affordable. And if you're a young person now, even if you get a mortgage of like $300,000 or $400,000, the way that if you're progressing, if you sit on and still, that mortgage is going to be a burden to you. When I started working, I had to put together 2 of my checks. You said take piece out of one check and piece out of the other check to pay my mortgage. Now my mortgage is 1/3 of my check. I've had my house for 25 years. The Mambiju house, them, when they sold for like $30,000. Now they're selling for $200,000 at least. So that's to show you the time value of what happens over time. So when you give an opportunity to somebody to own a home, you immediately, we're immediately enriching families. So you buy a house, build a house, create a house, the government puts up $50,000, $100,000. The finished product, you probably spent $350 on, right? 100 of that was a government on. So you actually paid $250. And then once that house comes alive, you immediately gain another $100,000 in equity because the house value is greater than the construction costs. So we're actually enriching people by $200, $150, $300,000 by doing this program. That is an asset that you could leverage to build another house down the road. You could refinance, get the money back out. There's no restriction against that. You can invest in a business. You could raise your family. When the house is built, you need furniture. You need water for it. You're gonna need maintenance on your home. You're gonna want to have a yard. You're gonna want to do additions. That's more boost to the economy. So when your kids now, the way that we did this program, which was never done before, you can have an apartment in your house, and we still help you. So we're giving you an income producer now. So now if you have a job, your wife have a job, and you have an apartment, that's 3 sources of income already that you have recurring. And we made it so that that apartment has to be rented at affordable rent. So now you're giving somebody else a chance, another Virgin Islander is getting an opportunity to rent now below what the crazy rates what people are charging for apartments at this time. So it's kind of like a trifecta of just wealth giving. And you know, the way that we always think, and I want to respond, is like, we have been in crisis mode for so long, we can't get out of crisis thinking. So we're in a part of the Virgin Islands where we're scrambling for recovery, when in reality, what we have is an opportunity to transform these islands in a way. And we're fighting. We're fighting. The people are fighting to build it back exactly how it was when they were complaining about it every single day when it was like that. So, you know, the tremendous opportunity that we have now as Virgin Islanders, and the other opportunity that I think we're not seeing, is that we're already here. We're already here in this place.
Okay, and just a minute, Richard has to run, but we got to catch up again soon, because there was a lot of stuff we wanted to deep dive into.
Yes.
And I'd like to do that, okay?
Not a problem, not a problem.
Thanks for coming in, and I'm looking forward to the next time, okay?
Good seeing you.
All right, and we need to have a poll in people, what do you call it?
A meeting of the minds?
A retreat, yeah, so we can get the different folks together, so that we can make, you know, the polling process be even more productive, because you're running for office, you're going to do your poll. You know, that's just good homework that you're going to do. But the rest of the time, all the information that comes out of those polls, if we could start getting that more regular to the people, and maybe influence how they think and how they look at things, because I'm listening to you and your perspective, and it's important that people see these other perspectives, because sometimes they get so mired into one. And
no, because it's an actual exploitation of our people by our leadership. Because, you know, in life, we all have opportunities. But if you listen to the whole message during this election, you could tell me, Senator Canton, I won't call you Dougie, but Senator Canton.
I ain't bound with it on my forehead.
What new idea have you heard from any candidate this election? There's not been one thing you've been like, wow. All it has been is, I could do it a better job. These people aren't doing what they're supposed to do. You're suffering. It's not your fault. It's the government's fault. And I'm going to help you not suffer anymore.
A kind of a pandering. But this is, as you said something very, very important to me just now, which is in essence that you see a way of keeping people in a certain way of thinking,
right,
that benefits you, as opposed to looking at the bigger picture.
Right.
Or if you could get them out of that thinking,
yes,
how much further the tides would lift, the boats would go up, and everything.
So you remember another wealth building exercise, right? I even forget, a woman come up to me, my partner bring the woman to me, and he said, hey, I want you to meet this lady. She wanted to meet you so bad. I said, oh, nice to meet you. I said, well, why did you want to meet me? She said, I was one of the winners for the $100,000 during the pandemic. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember how people well, I shouldn't say people. The opposition complained. The same Senator Bailey complained and moaned about why they giving away this money, what they could have do with this money. We're stuck in the mentality of either I could do this or that. But we're not in that mentality anymore. We can do this plus that. People are I listen to people complain. They come to me and say, you know, oh, they have a long presentation. I say, hey, what do you want? The kidney project that the dialysis project that we funded, right? Amina Salim came to me with like 8 people. I said, Amina, why are you here? I have this presentation for you. I said, Amina, why are you here? She says, well, we need to go through this. I said, what do you want? I said, finally I get it out. They said, we want to build a dialysis clinic so that people in St. Croix have an opportunity to choose, and if we ever have another storm, they never have to go anywhere. I said, okay, how much money you want? She said, $1 million. I said, okay. The meeting's done. She says, but let me show you my presentation. I was like, I don't need to see your presentation. And the thing that I'm trying to depict now is when people ask us for money to do projects for kids, for the community, for education, for healthcare, we just ask how much, because there are resources for those things. Home ownership now, we're trying to do the same thing. There are places where we need help still. I could tell you, we need help in waste management. Like, we got to figure out a way to make disposal of our trash economical. Right now, most people don't pay to throw away their trash. It's a free service. All those nice communities you see in the States that you like to compare us to, they pay for the trash pickup. And don't tell me land tax. We have the lowest land tax in the country. I know that it's buttressed by the fact that we pay so high in insurance. So it levels out. But what I'm saying to you is, these are the areas where we need help. The prison, all our prisoners are in the States. We need to bring them home. We need to rebuild the prison. We don't have the money to do that. WAPA. Right now, WAPA is in a serious cash crunch. We've been footing the bill for, instead of raising the electric rates, but WAPA needs money. They need cash. They have projects and stuff that they can build out that will be able to solve a lot of the issues with power. But right now, you're like, you know how that is. It's like you can finish the house, but you just need cash. And if the quicker you get the cash, then you can stop paying rent, then you can pay the mortgage, because you gotta live someplace while they build a house. So that's the kind of trap that WAPA is in right now. Those are the places where we belly aching. But other places, we good, man.
Well, some of the things that you mentioned there fit into me to where you can afford to do versus where you can't afford not to do.
I love that. Say that again. What you can afford to do versus
what you can't afford not to do.
Right.
And we have a lot of things that we can't afford not to do it. So when Amina came to you, and you look at dialysis, and you look at diabetes, which, by the way, that fair was a really nice fair. The Diabetes Center of Excellence. I found out that my body mass index was a little too high, so I don't know. Anyhow, but yeah, the reality is, this is something good. It benefits the community. Let's think in terms of how we could do it. Not focus on all the problems to get there. Those are just challenges along the way.
Right.
We gotta look at those things as challenges and get to where it is we want to go. If we're going to transform this place, we got to do more than changing and hastening it.
Oh my goodness. Where have you been all my life, Doug Canton? I mean, it's like I watch right now, right? The other distraction is one thing I am in my life is grateful, right? Once people convince you that you're in a state of lack, and you gotta understand, the whole American way is to convince Americans every day that they don't have enough, so they go out and work harder and buy more stuff that they do not need. And when you think like that all the time, and you're always in a system of lack, it keeps you in a sense of panic all the time, so that you always feel like you're missing out, when you got to slow down a little bit and realize that you're not in a pace of panic, and that you have the ability to attain. I mean, when you think about what the state we're in now, we pay for your rent. We have programs to pay for your rent, your light, your water, your cable, your mortgage, your for your food. Like what you get free college education. Once you graduate from a public high school in the Virginians, no matter what year, free college education. You get free job training, right? If you don't have enough to eat, you get food stamp. We're in a pandemic now, you still getting the maximum food stamp. So you wouldn't get food stamp based on your income. You're gonna get the maximum food stamp once you qualify. The amount of resources you have at your fingertips. But if you're in a constant state of panic where you're thinking, I don't have, then you cannot breathe and really recognize, like, you could see, I mean, maybe not everybody, but I'm telling you as your governor, I could see it. It's like so much growth and prosperity is occurring here at once. And if you don't believe me, try buy a piece of real estate. You can't find why. People see it. They're coming here to enjoy that.
That state of mind, of panic, if you want to use that, okay? That state of mind has been the vehicle of manipulation all along. So,
and not just here, globally.
Globally. But this is why when I listen to you guys talk, when you bring out a program, I listen. I don't walk in with a skeptical mind. I listen. And that's why when I heard about the home ownership thing, it just hit me. It's like, wow, it's like the skies open up and all of a sudden
skeptical.
You know, it's gonna happen.
Yes.
Because the mindset at the right place has changed.
Yes.
Changing the rider in the middle of the stream is still the same house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the message I'm hearing is, let's change the rider in the middle of the stream. That's the message that I'm hearing.
Right.
And I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in the one-upmanship of, that I'm speaking me, I got to vote just like everybody else, you know. I'm not interested in I could do it better, because I've lived here long enough to have heard that tune.
Yeah.
I can sing it by heart. Okay?
It's true.
And for whatever it's worth, a little personal experience, you know, in St. Thomas, we have the mental health center up there on the hill.
Schulterbrand
Center. And remember when we pushed to get that done, and the idea was, okay, let's do this, let's expand it, and then let's focus on St. Croix in the next step. Well, I didn't get a chance at the next step, and mental health just totally fell off the map.
Right.
Then about 2 elections ago, everything was mental health. And so here we are, 4 years later. In that context, all of those advocates, and I'm talking about you guys, because the bottom line is the legislature got to find the money and fund it, and everything else. It could happen, but you ain't hear peep about mental health 4 years later.
Right.
And so
it's still a huge problem.
It's still a huge problem, but it's the process of manipulation.
Right.
Okay. So this is what I'm saying. When I see how creatively we have avoided the inevitable crunch that's coming with WAPA, giving WAPA a chance to get in that position where you don't have to kill the people to provide them with power. These are things that I am looking for. How are you going to do these things? Well, in this case, I don't have to ask you that, because you've been doing it.
Well,
GRS is another one.
Yeah.
You know, the bottom line is you're going to always have discontent, but when you see people who focus on rallying discontent as a vehicle for why you should make a decision, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
but you know, I mean, and it's a distraction. It's like a distraction from
the
real issues. It's like, you know, the election that irritate me. I love going out and meeting people and campaign and stuff, but it irritates me because we're having these conversations and we're having these debates with these 2-minute answers to these very complex problems, and people are making decisions based on that. I believe in results, and I believe in measuring, you know, even though me and Mr. Dorsey may not agree on what his poll is, I respect him for making an attempt, and I respect your opinion. But we have, like, I guess for me, I have taught myself over the last 4 years to slow down and to really pay attention to the daily. But that has been the mistake of every politician, and the system traps you into addressing the daily issue on the radio station when we have larger issues that will fix all of those things. And that's what we did. We went out and we focused on getting resources, and we said trust is, I'm loving this conversation, I wish we could talk for 2 hours. Trust is the number one tenet of this administration. I said we're going to, from beginning, 3 things: establish trust through transparency, use that trust to bring investment, take that investment and invest in our people. And that's what we do. The people still don't believe, they doubt me. I told people, I said, listen, we're going to give every Social Security recipient who's a senior, because you got kids as Social Security recipients as well. We're going to give them a $500 check. A lady, one of our seniors, pull a car over, she see me on the side of the road. Stop, come out, I got governor. We gain this money for you. Like, people still don't believe. After we pay the 8%, we come up on the taxes, we fix the retirement system. People still don't believe. Trust me, people, when I tell you there is so much prosperity to be gained if you stop panicking and look at what we have before us, and we make a concerted effort as a community to pursue prosperity, the vision. And that's the other thing. The election has no vision. These people are like, oh, we're going to rebuild it, that, there. They're not thinking what's going on globally. My goal, a lot of these things that you see happen, they come out of my head, I think, constantly. My goal is to get 200 free internet sites. And every kid, I could show you my presentation from 2009. Every kid in the Virgin Islands to have access to the internet and an internet access device. We are there. Now they have the power. Now we have to start showing them. We got to change our curriculum, I think. Okay. And that's a heavy lift. I wish I had.
Well, Governor, I know everybody wants to talk and everything else, so I can get cussed because I had you here.
No, we're having a good conversation. I know you want to take calls, but I think these conversations are so important. People call in and they ask. I respect people's opinion, but I've been asked every question 8 times, okay, in different forums. But this is a conversation that I haven't had for the whole entire election. When we're thinking about visioning for the Virgin Islands and where we're going, like, tourism is going to have peril. We know this. History repeats itself. We've been here before. We did it in the 60s. We tripled our population in the 70s. In the 80s, since the 80s, we've been in crisis. Crisis after crisis after crisis.
In our mindset has to change, and when I say that, I'm not putting down anyone.
No.
It has to change. If you want a different result, you got to change your mindset. You can't continue with the same mindset. A couple of things that I want to throw out from a personal perspective. When we have intramural sports and these children get to travel back and forth, to the extent that you guys are supporting that, I commend you on that, because Absolutely. It's so important that we have that cross-pollination going on. The other day they had a volleyball tournament and somebody invited me there to tape it. It was fantastic what went down in that respect, and continue in that realm, because it's so important. Now we got VINGN.
Yes.
Okay. And we've got the support that it gives to the Department of Education. And I can just throw out this idea to you, because to me it would be so fantastic if we have a special history class, or a special science class, or a special whatever class, where the teachers between St. Thomas and St. Croix collaborate, and they teach one class.
Hello.
Because they're in this classroom and that classroom, and they got access to teachers live as well as whatever.
Yes.
I just want to see it happen, though. I just throwing that one out
no,
there.
I mean, like, so you got a lot of things to leap over, and it's like, it just gives me a headache, because it's so clear to me, and it's so hard to convince people. And you could be governor, and you could take people and mash their face in it and jam it through. And sometimes you have to do that, but that's never good. You got to get people to a place where they can see it. we complaining about the shortage of teachers. We need to take a university approach. We know our kids are having a hard time with math, science, reading, writing. We could take the best teachers, right, for instruction. They could teach 100 people, 150 people. You could be a teacher in a classroom in St. Thomas and let a teacher in St. Croix who is proficient, like has produced these kids who are doing excellent, let them teach. And you could sit in the class and understand and learn their methods and technologies.
They're partners.
Absolutely.
They're partners in doing it. But not only that, the students, you know, I had a friend come over from St. Thomas one time, and her daughter came over the next day, and her daughter was taking on a tour of St. Croix. And you know what? She said, "Mommy, you know, St. Croix got hills." Okay? I mean, and I just smiled when I heard that. St. Croix got hills. It's like, you need to know about St. Croix, we need to know about St. Thomas.
No. Let me tell you, Dougie, my greatest dream is to get the children of St. Croix to St. John, to walk down the Reef Bay Trail, to go to Annabog. It's like, I did that as a kid because it wasn't St. Thomas, it was a 5-minute boat ride. But, like, yes, I mean, those are the things we established. I mean, you know, people ain't talking about it. I established with my administration, we established the Virgin Islands park system. You know what this means? That means like the maroon ruins. We actually started out the process. Now we're getting a section of the maroon ruins to be preserved for people to create walking and hiking trails. We buy in property. We're just about to buy the property, the beachfront in Frederickstead that leads up to the pool, all the way around the whole lagoon and come back around. Because I realized, and I gotta give credit, name's slipping me now, Kami harassed me about Frederickstead, about how the beachfront property is going. We buying up that property, right? Because the campgrounds are going. So when the property comes for sale, we buying it. All of that is going to be part of this National Virgin Islands park system. We're acquiring properties around Megan's Bay, and just like you got a national park for the federal government, got for we too. So
we're talking vision.
Oh, but this
we're
vision.
Vision.
These
but
are.
I'm glad that you're sharing this because people need to understand when we go to camp over there on the other side of Columbus Landing,
right,
a little place in there,
yeah,
and we got the Taino thing,
the ball
that was taking his
yes,
Denmark and all this other stuff, but the property is up for sale, and if the property is sold, then you're going to even have no place to park.
Exactly.
You're going to have to walk from the road, go down there to whatever. So
yeah,
that's vision. That's super important. Well, I just wanted to I know you're a busy guy, but
I here for as long as you got me in, because this is so interesting a conversation.
No, first, that's why I went to the students coming over for the intramural and what they're doing
big
here,
time,
because I used to be in sports, and I know the hassle it was in terms of traveling. I'm not hearing some of the hue and cry on the radio about the sports and travel anymore, so somebody must be doing something right. That's all I
so Paul Calvert, right? Calvert, Weather Commissioner of Parks. Every time I see him, I'd be like a new idea. So I had already told him, we bought drones, we bought big screen TVs, because not only do our kids need to communicate, like come over and play intramural, but they're playing all these video games with people all over the world. We could have Virgin Islands tournaments. I want to get kids back into our community centers and our parks, so that's why we're fixing them up. But we have free Wi-Fi in the park, so you know they're going to come for free Wi-Fi, they're going to come for video games. But once we get them there, we could do some baseball, basketball, soccer, whatever it is, you know.
Well,
you get me excited because this is the Virgin Islands we're creating.
And exactly, and so much more we can be in that context. And
yes.
It takes vision, and the first steps to vision, I want to acknowledge those and move to the next step. And throw something out that we pitch the government, but we could talk about it again. You know, when you talk about that trail in St. John, we know that it's physically and financially impossible to take every school from St. Croix, the students-wise, and take them to St. John. We know that. But we can put together a team of students who, with that streaming backpack, and the iPad to control it, and 4 students who each have the cameras and a person who leading it. So now all of a sudden you have a student crew that's out there taking the tour, professionally being taken on the tour, and all of these folks using the VINGN network resources can go along.
Let's do it. Write it up. Give me a proposal.
We already did. I tell you,
let's go away then.
Because
how much you think it'll cost?
I ain't thinking about money right now.
I was thinking about dollars and cents.
That's right. I'll let you think about
cost
it.
But
what I'm saying, and I say that because in the nonprofit organizations that I have been involved in, that have interacted with this administration, that's been the approach. Come to us, tell us how much it costs. Either we could do it, we can do it, we could help you do it, but we always get an answer, and that's that's something that's very encouraging from my perspective. But this is how we have to think. If we can't afford 5 buses, a children, and all the chaperones, and all, let's figure out a way to bring the thing that they need to see. Right. Because when Governor, I had some friends coming over from. That's a
fantastic idea.
It just makes sense. It just makes sense because
we could even do it for like you take kids from different classrooms. So you do a contest to write up an essay or about the park and everything.
Unlimited possibilities, Governor, unlimited, but it's just a different thinking that's necessary.
Yeah.
And I see you guys as open to this type of thing. Anyhow, I didn't bring you in here to stroke your ego or nothing.
No.
I just want you to know that.
No.
These are just things that I see, that I've been involved in some way, even on the periphery. And I have to say that when we look at where we've been, where we are, and the possibilities of where we could go to.
You have to think like that. I mean, and I love the way you think because you're creative. I mean, one of the ideas, like, I went on I had a person from the States that was our federal monitor for some federal programs we had when I was in labor, and they actually was from St. Croix. One day while she was here, she and 2 of her colleagues, I was giving them a ride back, and I said, you guys ever take a tour of the island? They say no. I said, you know what? I'm going to take the afternoon off. I'm going to take y'all on a tour. She asked the most questions. The one what born in St. Croix, you know. I explained the things to her, and she's like, what? What's that? I never knew that. Where's this? Point you down. How did you get there? Our young people, and I notice a lot of people, St. Croix big enough. It's bigger than St. Thomas, but big enough for you to lose a lot of stuff because it's so big in terms of people's mentality and where you go. We need to have, and this was my idea during the pandemic, to spend $1 million in just free passes to go on stuff. Kayak tours, Buck Island, the Rum Factory, WIM, whatever it is, right? Because zip lining. Because our students, the real way to teach history, people don't talk about all this history and in the classroom, is to take them outside.
Hands-on exposure.
Yes, take possible. Them. Like we should have had that Bull and Bread, the Hamilton Jackson Day, like they always irritate me because, we spend a lot of money on campaign and we bring all these people there and there's nobody there. We had more people in our orange shirts than they had in the entire Bull and Bread.
And this is where I wanted to take your words and massage them here, because when people say this irritates me, listen to this. No. It irritates me also because it's devolved.
Yes.
It's devolved. It's no longer about D. Hamilton Jackson
yes.
and our history and our learning, and that's what we have to transform. So now that I've voiced my complaint about that,
Thank
where
you.
we're going to take it from there.
Yeah.
And D. Hamilton Jackson needs to be something that's taught by the children. And I say that I challenge these nonprofit groups to put together the type of things that are going to get the youth involved in teaching the history, because
right.
I am one of those who went away to come back to realize so much about St. Croix alone
right.
that I didn't know, and which means I didn't get it. I know we have this ongoing challenge in terms of what's being taught in the schools or what's being taught in the homes. It's really like a domino effect.
Right.
So it's not just the schools, it's a domino effect, because now we have to figure out how we're going to reach back to all those parents coming forward
right.
to get them to understand and build a sense of national identity. That's what they call it.
And self-worth.
And self-worth.
Yes,
In
when
that
you think
sense.
about this dude is incredible.
Yes. So
You know?
in that sense, we have to
Not the
think
government,
about what's possible, Governor.
Right.
When I listen to the campaign, a lot of time I just turn it off because I don't want to hear about the same old problem and you ain't have no solution. I don't want to hear about the same old gripe and you don't have no tea for me to drink or whatever the case
Yes.
may be. I'm looking for how we're going to move to another level, not the level that we've been in for the past 20, 30, 40 years. That's
How
what
come,
I'm looking
how
for.
come I don't come on this show more often? That's what you're talking about. When we went, listen, the whole legislature and the GRS were mad at me because the first GRS summit we had in 2019, Austin Nib started talking about all the problem. And I said, listen, I ain't come here today to listen to our talk about what the problem is. We well acquainted with the problem. And I don't want to hear no dumminess about cutting nobody pay by 40% because it ain't gonna happen. The legislature ain't gonna sign it and they ain't gonna send it up there. And if they send it to me, I ain't signing it. Done. Everybody was like, oh, he was so rude. Oh, we keep having these things to talk about what the problem is. What are your ideas? When you think let me tell you what we're doing, right? Just phenomenal. We have a partnership with Microsoft now that we're creating this thing called IO Academy. We're putting 4 innovation centers, 1 in each high school. And those innovation centers are going to complement teaching for IT, computer science in every single grade. You want to hear something valuable that kids need to learn about? How all this stuff works, how databases work, what's cybersecurity, what are IP protocols, how do computers speak to one another, how do you make them engage?
To each other quiet.
Yes. You know, when you train a generation of Virgin Islanders who know a little bit about everything about computing, about AI, and can have that kind of vision, we are powering a generation of people that will be able to work worldwide from the Virgin Islands. And that's what we have to do, because after this construction is done, where are these people going to work? They have to be able to work remotely. They're going to have a construction people to maintain and stuff and do everything, but we have to do these things. It's like our entire community is falling apart because we're stuck in the past and we won't grab onto the future, because people would prefer a comfortable hell than an unknown heaven. We want to sit in the same place. There's no way you could sit and get better. You got to move. And, I've been trying. When you say change course now, we change the course now. We got to move. Yeah. I can only do so much. It's up to us as a community to say, this is what we want and push towards that. But stop getting distracted by these people telling you about their problems all the time. They're supposed to be leading.
Commiseration. There's the art of manipulation through commiseration.
Right.
That's what we're trying to get away from. Well, let me just throw out this idea, because sometimes
you got a lot of
thinking
ideas. We
different.
got to keep you
About thinking
in
different.
tow.
Well, we got VINGN, and we've got these different potential community centers.
Right.
You could imagine if we came up with a little card that a student could swipe to say that, so that you could come in and plug that card in and it says, this child did the homework. In other words, okay? Check it out. Imagine if every Saturday morning, afternoon, you had, or once a month even, you had a video game challenge by community.
Right.
If you go to this particular center, or you go to that particular center, you represent it.
Right.
So you have this video game contest.
Yes.
Okay? And now it's not just St. Croix, because it's
right. Intra-island.
I had a young man, his mother couldn't get him to focus or do whatever. He used to get on a bus from Williams Delight to come down to Christiansted to come to my computer lab to learn something. Mother said, I can't get you to do nothing. How you make this one work? Well, we have to tap into how they think.
Yes.
Even in education, we have to tap into how they think. So I'm throwing that out in the sense that we have this resource through VINGN, and one of the challenges is to make sure that VINGN truly becomes a servant of the people and not a tip for the ISPs, because I see all of education, I won't stop in a second. I see all of education as being, and government as being one thing, and VINGN being the gateway, not to replace But all of a sudden, you got this big portal that everybody to plug into,
Yes.
and so you say, well, okay, I'm paying this one, I'm paying that one, but we have one portal, not 7 different ones, and
Right.
one could break
So,
down. And
so
stop.
that's why we have this program with this free internet. These 200 free sites we constructed. So you could go Kramer's Park today. You can't get cell service out there, but you got internet out there though.
Yeah,
Free internet.
And you got to go up on a little bluff. To get
Yes.
it,
Will you
know?
anywhere in Kramer's Park and I was out there, the building out there, they were under construction now, but you still have free internet. So the vision is to have these 200 free megabit sites. The new housing we're building, we hardwiring fiber to every apartment, you know. This is where we go. We shoot in internet now to Tatola and powering the BVI through VINGN. So we creating a bigger network and creating a source of income now to fuel and keep our internet free. So when this thing where you're talking about the housing, you know, I had to get so excited when I have this. I was there this morning and I was like, oh, I don't want to talk about anything boring this morning. You got me excited, doggy. All we need is people. We need somebody to say, and we going to pay you. Somebody who is capable that could do things and say, like, I'm going to organize all these housing community centers. And I'm going to have people here who are going to man these consoles and invite kids to come in and play video games on these consoles, big screen. We could buy them 80-inch screens and play video games with Williams Delight, Sand Farm, wherever that thing is. All we need is people to do it. The problem is I have way too much ideas and not enough people. So if you could do it and you out there listening to me, give me a ring, give Dougie a ring. If you want to do it, Dougie, we go to it. We have the resources. We don't have people. Education have $139 million to spend in the next 4 years. And when I saw their plan, I said, listen, y'all don't have the resources to spend this money by yourself. You got to find community partners. So all these people out here, let me tell you, you want to do dance after school, you want to do karate, you want to teach drones, you want to do basketball, you want to do soccer.
Put some fire under them. Because
tie it in with a reading program or something where we could prove that our kids are learning, are getting disciplined. Their grades, I want to see the grades go up or whatever to participate, and we're funding you.
Well,
This is not
there
a,
has to be the fire under them to say, show me. You know, when the federal government said, hospitals, you're not doing clinics anymore. It
Right.
must be a non-profit organization. Well, all of a sudden we were looking at this potential loss of money. No, we
Right.
have to become creative and say, well, how are we going to get our clinics to become non-profits and provide the services and get this federal money coming in? And in the same way, education needs to be challenged, where they have a report where they can show
Yes.
these tentacles out and actual programs and contracts and services being done by these non-profits
Right.
that can basically leverage education and help it get to
Yes,
a higher level.
absolutely.
All right? Anyhow, I in a minute or so, I have a colleague in here who going to be calling the marshals to come and evict me.
You put them in out? I got to put them out.
So,
I get down the road.
Anyhow.
I got big guests coming in. See, cause when we just call you to come, you don't come. So
well,
we got to make sure that normally I would give him the
me
extra
ain't
time.
getting nothing. Me ain't getting in between nothing with big people. Government,
No,
I got you here now.
I got
okay?
stuff to do too. So, but the conversation has been just awesome.
Right.
I really feel excited about we're talking about real things. You know, not that other things ain't real, but
Well,
90% of the problems that we have now are gonna get solved because it's just time. We have the resources to solve. We got some that are hard to solve.
Okay.
You know,
well,
but
Governor, you have those who don't do things just for money, and you have those who do things for community, and then you have the cross pollination between the two, and sometimes the hybrids in between there. But all I'm saying is that we need a kind of a think tank, a community-based think tank that can feed into
you sound like Carl now.
feed into your administration or whoever the administration is in 50 years ago, in that sense. And I'm saying it to you now in the context because all of these ideas are things that is going to help to leverage
Right.
what you guys are doing. The same thing when it comes to infrastructure, and I'm going to throw this out to you as a kind of like a challenge to to do something different in the future when it comes to education. Can we get when it comes to our buildings, can we get a task force, combination of people in the community, combination of your professionals, whatever, who would go through these schools and basically do a catalog of everything that we're concerned with in that school and establish it, and then come to the people and say, this is what the problems are, and then somebody's reporting, this is what we're doing about it. And furthermore, if there's something we missed, this is the email, this is the phone number, whatever, please bring it to our attention. Because we hear on the talk shows and they come into us talking about, oh, and it's the mold, this is whatever it is. But we're on the talk show. You hoping that maybe a commissioner or somebody listening and go have
They ain't got time to listen to talk shows. Right. But I'll tell you, education actually went through and formed a new school task force. They went for a year and spoke to people all over the community. As usual, a lot of people didn't show up.
Bring the community in, and that's part of the challenge. Is that
people don't show up.
But I telling you that these institutions will go about it in a way that over time people say, oh, I'm just another something, whatever, and they don't show up. And I'm just saying, this is something we could talk about more. But I'm just saying that we have to stop going through this thing every September, and this is something that is donkey years old. Every September here, what's wrong with the schools? That we again gotta have a vision of how we're gonna turn it upside down.
Absolutely.
And make it different.
Absolutely.
Anyhow,
we'll do that. The other thing, you give me an idea too, though. Some of these reports that I get, I'm gonna start making sure that I send them to the talk show hosts. So when they can't say that they ain't informed, because a lot of the stuff that we do. That's one of my other pet peeves, and I've been trying to figure out a way to do it is we have a lot of information, but it's all over the place. There should be one depository where you could go and read reports about healthcare or whatever about the government, audits, whatever, one website.
All your public information officers need some type of way to aggregate their stuff, because you got a lot going on in government that unless you happen to be here, there, or whatever, there's no one place we could go and find out what's going on.
People. We need people. But it's been a great conversation. Thank you for having me. And please invite me back.
And be safe out there. All right. Continue with the vision.
Good show. Take care.
Good.
Mark the X. This is AM 970 WSTX.
Infrastructure improvements, millions they have invested. 2 years in the pandemic, we came out strong and you know it. Tax returns in abundance, 225 million. It's plain as day to see.